You are listening to the Getting Lucky Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I am your host, Lucky Robert Curtis. I'm a columnist on WhatCulture.com. Joining me today is the Professor of Pain, Marcus Mitchell. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Thank you. Being called the Professor of Pain never gets old, because it's so far away from my personality.
You're a vicious killer. That's what people don't realize about you. Vicious.
Vicious and sneaky, I suppose.
This is going to be a first for us because we don't actually have a UFC event to cover. We're not previewing an event, and we're not reviewing an event, so we thought we'd just have a nice, fun conversation about a lot of different stuff regarding mixed martial arts, and maybe we can get Mitchell to open up about his childhood.
Well, one should be so lucky, but usually I have to pay for those types of sessions.
Well, there you go. Before we get going into some of our topics we want to talk about, let's just bring up some breaking news.
Alex Emelianenko retired in the past few days. He retired with a career that's one of those kind of what-ifs. You wish that he had been in some of the bigger organizations. He was 21-6, so he had a great record. He had vicious knockouts, 13 KOs, 5 subs. He was good on the feet as well as on the ground, kind of like his brother. Of course, he never amounted to Fedor status, but I think it was just one of those things where it's like you always wonder what could have been with him, but then his career started to fall off. He lost to Jeff Monson, and it was just like, okay, I guess it is time to hang it up. It's sad to see, but after his brother retired, I guess the fire burnt out in him as well.
Well, here's the thing about Emelianenko. He's, in every sense, he's the dumb, drunk brother of Fedor. He went to prison, came out with all these tattoos, crazy boy, and he was actually supposed to transition into a larger promotion and fight in California, but he got popped. And they said he's not medically cleared. And they can't say why for confidentiality reasons. He claims it was because he was late. But speaking anonymously, one of the California athletic commissioners, whomever that title would be, said that he'll actually never be cleared to fight in California or anywhere in the United States. And the suspicion was they had hepatitis B. Now, I agree with you. Alexander Emelianenko was one of those guys that had tons of potential, and he was a tweener. We'll get to this in a second. He's a guy that's not really a heavyweight, but he's also way too big to be a light heavyweight.
Yeah, he was around the area where his brother was at, and that's what made the two brothers so remarkable.
Yeah,
he was just a guy I always rooted for, and what's weird is I never really rooted for his brother the way that I did for him, and I know that was probably the other way around for a lot of people.
I liked Alexander. I wanted him. I'm a younger brother myself. I wanted him to rise into greatness out of his brother's shadow, but ultimately, I guess it'll never be.
No.
Another person retiring at a very young age of 30 is Mark Hominick, a UFC fighter, Canadian. He just came off of a losing streak. Mark Hominick lost to Pablo Garza in a great fight, Eddie Yagin, Chen Sung-jung, and Jose Aldo. And ever since Aldo and his coach dying, he really hasn't ever been the same fighter. But here's my prediction for Mark. I think he'll take off a year, maybe 2, train, teach, get his love back for the sport, and come back. He's just far too young to remain retired without having that hunger to compete again. That's my prediction.
Yeah, when you saw him fight Aldo, that kind of fire doesn't just die out because of a couple of losses. Nobody takes a baseball-sized lump on their forehead and continue to walk forward and then walk away from the sport for good. I think that he was devastated. Like you said about his coach, he was devastated about his knockout loss to the Zombie, and he just wasn't feeling it. I think he'll be back.
Yeah, I think he will too. Another retirement, this time an entire organization. Strikeforce has confirmed that they are indeed hanging up the gloves and moving into the old folks' home after their January show. Not much of a surprise.
No, but they finally did confirm it instead of, beating around the bush with it. I think that Rousey coming over really put him under.
This is really a disaster on all levels. Granted, the UFC bought Strikeforce. From what I've heard from an interview with Josh Barnett, they were in the midst between being a small profitable company and trying to be a large profitable company. So they got large but lost their profitability, and that's ultimately what sort of turned their fortunes around almost overnight. I mean, they had the MMA world by the throat when they announced their heavyweight tournament. They looked as strong and as great as ever, and then almost within 4 months, the bottom fell out. Fighters like Fedor, got injured. All these alternates stepped in, not injured, lost, and Overeem didn't want to fight, couldn't fight in the time frame they wanted. They spaced out their cards. They canceled cards. They wasted a year of Gilbert Melendez. This entire organization should have been folded into the UFC at least 6 months ago.
It should have fell when they said it was going to fall. And you saw, I guess the writing was on the wall even for the casual viewer that saw Strikeforce. It was always the not as good UFC when it comes to production. But, and for me, I absolutely hated the commentating, even more than Goldberg in the UFC. But I think that they had the fighters, they had the talent. That tournament, when they announced that, man, everybody wished they had that. And one of the best things, I guess, that came out of that crappy fall apart tournament is Daniel Cormier. He was able to come out of, I guess, all of the mishaps there and be the shining star, and I think he'll obviously continue to rise, whereas most of the rest, other than Overeem, are just going to fall. I'm happy that they're folding, but I really did like Strikeforce shows.
And in another smaller plot or gift out of the heavyweight tournament, the rebirth of Josh Barnett. He is now a relevant heavyweight again with a very good chance of coming into the UFC after really doing everything he could to burn every conceivable bridge back to Zuffa.
I'm not a Barnett fan per se, so...
You have to admit, he's he's the Chael Sonnen of the heavyweights. He's extremely charismatic.
He absolutely is. He's got a mind for it. He's got the gift of gab. And he was on a hell of a streak there until, he was outclassed in every way by Cormier. But I don't dislike him, to the fact that I won't watch him, but I won't root for him.
There's a question that comes up every now and then among MMA fans, particularly on MMAshare.com, and that's this idea of going back to the tournament format that you saw in the UFC early days, that you saw in Pride. And I think this heavyweight tournament exemplifies why that can't happen. And there's a Fuel TV show, I think, it's called the UFC Legends Roundtable, where Coleman, Couture, Gracie, and these guys, they talk about why tournaments can't happen today. And that's because even with the amount of fighters and the greatness of certain fighters, it's still a fairly even playing field. You can't go into a fight like they could in the old days and take a guy down and finish the fight within 3 or 4 minutes with no damage. Basically just a warm-up. Nowadays, if you fight, there's a good chance you're going to pick up an injury even if you win, and you won't be able to fight for a couple months. I think the tournament in today's mixed martial arts is an absolute lost relic of a bygone age. There's no point of having a tournament.
Right, and with the way that fighters are getting injured just in camps, how are they going to train for a tournament like that? How can they expect a fighter, especially like you said at heavyweights, how can you expect them to fight that often when they really fight maybe max 2-3 times a year? Mm-hmm. It's something I love. I love the idea of it, but I don't think it'll pan out. Too many injuries. And if you invite Overeem into anything, he's going to screw something up some way or another.
Let's move on to a new topic. I thought it'd be fun if we grabbed silly, stupid, crazy, weird MMA stories, or facts, as your case may be. The story that I thought was crazy was a former Ultimate Fighter hopeful, I think his name is Ray Elb, or LB, broke his penis during sex with his girlfriend.
Oh my goodness! How do you break it?
Well, apparently it was a second round submission due to vaginal triangle.
Was Chael Sonnen somehow involved?
I have no idea. I have no idea how this happens.
It's a muscle. How do you break it?
Well, it's not even a muscle. It's just basically like a blood sheath.
Listen, I'm the professor. It's a muscle.
Oh, okay. And in this regard, you're the professor of pain, so I'm going to defer to all penis pain questions to Mitchell. Personally, I think I'd break up with her, never talk to her again, kill the doctor that leaked the story. How does he break it?
How does he break it? How do they heal it? They can't put it in a cast. The cast is going to be too small at some point when it, contracts.
Yeah, I think clearly the holistic remedy for curing a broken penis is oral massage.
I was gonna say I would disagree with you and break up and not break up with her, because she knows she's gonna feel bad for that, and you're gonna get something out of that in the oral department.
Once bitten, twice shy, and I mean that in the very literal sense. What do you got?
Well, I wasn't finding any weird MMA news. Nothing stuck out to me. But I did find some interesting facts that, I mean, at least they interested me, so I don't know what they do for you. But it was interesting to find out that the UFC belt is actually made of real gold and not just some type of metal that looks like gold. And to have your very own replica of the belt and completely piss off John Jones and make him cry like a little baby about that, that would cost you about $1,000, and you can have the UFC belt made exactly the way it is. Another interesting thing I read is that Zuffa, every time Zuffa pops up, I always think, what the hell's that? Apparently that's an Italian word for scuffle. I thought it was a made-up word. So I guess that scuffle.
That's not as exciting as Zuffa.
No.
Scuffle.
Yeah, you are now watching Scuffle, and then you see, I don't know, head kicks.
Well, you got to say it with an Italian accent. You're watching the scuffling.
And the last fact, I guess, that interested me, and I think will interest a certain very short, midgety MMA share member, is that Mac Danzig used to be a pro skateboarder. I thought that was cool. He was talented with that, and then he's kind of talented at MMA. So,
not a Mac Danzig fan, not a skateboarding fan. I do have a question. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. I know that in some fight promotions that when you defend your belt, you get to keep the belt, so in that you're sort of building up a belt every time, or a trophy every time you defend. I think that's actually what Frank Shamrock got when he defended his belt 4 times. I think he actually has 4 belts, 1 for each defense. Is that how they do it now? Does Anderson Silva have 16 belts or however many defenses he's got?
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that when you win the belt, like Anderson Silva won the belt, he's got the same belt that he had when he won it. But if he were to lose it, he gets to keep that belt that he had. He gets to keep that actual one, and a new one would be made, I would assume.
So you're saying that he has his belt with him, and when he goes to America to defend his title, he hands it to Dana White before the match, and Dana comes into the ring and puts the belt on whoever wins. I think it's a new belt.
No, I think that when he won, Dana White gave him a belt, and he said, "Here, take this. When we do a show, we'll have a belt for you." And
so they have like the show belt.
It's a show belt,
your personal belt.
That would be my guess, and that would be the most cost-effective thing, because what the hell is he going to do with 16 belts? That doesn't make sense.
Have you not seen that picture with Jake Shields when he's pointing at his cabinet? Lay and pray, bitches.
Yeah, I've seen that picture, and I hate Jake Shields. But yeah, so I just don't think that's all the ones that he's defended.
I think they should get a belt for every title defense. Because, that increases the chances that these fighters will go broke and put these belts up on eBay to cover their hospital bills. I'd like to buy one.
Like I said, they'll probably put one on there for many, many dollars, and you can get your own one for $1,000.
But I want the one that's got Anderson Silva's ball sweat on it.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I want.
I get you there. I understand that.
Thank you. We're going to go to a new segment, and this is Fixing MMA. We're geniuses. He's the professor of pain, and I'm a professional idiot. And we know more than anyone else how to fix mixed martial arts.
Absolutely.
Thank you. To make it the best it can possibly be. I'll go first, because I'm the host.
Right.
This is not a new idea, but I think it's a good one. I want to add in a cruiserweight 225. Now, Dana has said no because he doesn't think there's enough talent. But one thing that the UFC has shown is that they're willing to raid other organizations for their talent. Now, you got the heavyweights, which are basically 226 to 265. Based off of the current UFC roster, and with the Strikeforce cast-offs, and raiding some other organizations like Bellator, by my count, guys that would really be in the upper end of the heavyweights now, you could get 20 legitimate fighters. And the way I did this was I sort of looked at the current heavyweights and I said, okay, if you're over 20 pounds away from cruiserweight, I'm going to leave you as a heavy.
Okay.
If you're a 245er, you're going down to cruiserweight, and if you're above that, you're staying at heavyweight. So Roy Nelson, staying at heavyweight. You've got lots of guys that are actually right there at the limit. For instance, Alistair Overeem, Antonio Silva, Ben Rothwell, Mark Hunt. These guys are all big, big boys. Now, take into a fact that there's some really good talent just outside of the UFC, like Sergey Karatanov. Clearly, he's UFC caliber. He won't be champ, and not unless something dramatic happens, like he gets bitten by a radioactive spider. But there are plenty of fighters out there of the same quality of a guy like Matt Mitrione, you know what I mean? Or a Christian Moorcraft. A lot of these guys are of that level. I think you bring those guys in, guys like Sean Jordan or Josh Barnett, bring them into the UFC, you'll have 20 guys at heavyweight right now. Now, on the cruiserweight side, these are the guys like Nogueira, Big Nog, or Dave Herman, or Pat Barry, or even JDS or Cain Velasquez, the smaller side of the heavyweights. Get them to cut down to 225, and I think all of them could do that easily, because they're not cutting any weight to get to heavyweight. They're just showing up and training.
I think that with the idea, not only do you have heavyweights coming down, you have light heavyweights, big light heavyweights like Forrest Griffin.
Exactly. I have a list.
Oh, you've listed
I'm talking to Miss Cleo because she knows what I'm thinking. Check these guys out. These are big heavyweights. Forrest Griffin, Brandon Vera, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Phil Davis, Cal Kingsbury, James Tahuna, Vinny Magalhães, and Ednaldo Oliveira. So if you take small heavyweights and big lightweights and then cherry pick some of the nice guys like Alexander Volkov, then you could have a field of 24 fighters in cruiserweight. And of course, as the UFC continues to grow, and we'll talk about that in a second, you'll backfill even more talent. Sure, it won't be as strong as lightweight or welterweight, but they're not now already.
No. The light heavyweight's on the decline, and maybe that would be why, at least the talent there is on the decline. That might be a deterrent for Dana White and the Zuffa crew, the Scuffle crew. But I think that your idea would be phenomenal for a number of reasons. I know that Dana wants to stay away from a million weight classes. I don't think adding a cruiserweight will.
Too late. Flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight.
No. I don't think that'll ruin it. I think the lower you go maybe hurts it. But I think that asking a John Jones to come up where he could dominate and be a champion in two different weight classes, I think that's a great idea. And it may be the only way we ever get to see John Jones fight a JDS or a Cain Velasquez. I'd love to see that. I'd love a cruiserweight division.
I have 3 reasons why this should happen. 1, from Dana White's perspective, John Jones is a young light heavyweight, and he's huge. Eventually, it's going to get harder and harder for him to cut down that weight. So he's saying already that in a year or two, he's going to have to go heavy. Now, if he goes from 205 to 265, he's going to either have to take a year off, at least, to bulk up to where he's legitimately a heavyweight, or he's going to lose a couple of fights because he's physically overpowered. Maybe he fights crap guys, but that's not how Dana does things. Dana gives him the best guy regardless of his preparation. If you put a cruiserweight in there, you're protecting one of your most valuable, marketable assets, an American pound-for-pound great.
I think that's absolutely what they should do. Another reason that you could give is that because you said it, and I think that would be the best reason that they should do it, because you said it.
Well, thank you. I'm sure that's right up there on Dana's list. In fact, I'm going to send him a tweet to him to his secret private Twitter account. Another thing is, if there's a cruiserweight and John Jones naturally fits into that, then I think that'll end this ludicrous discussion of Anderson Silva fighting John Jones. That's ludicrous.
That's ludicrous.
It's the size difference is just way too much.
It's awesome.
Do you really want to see Anderson Silva get beat by John Jones?
I don't think that would happen in any way. Anderson Silva would outclass him in every single way.
Anderson Silva is old enough to be John Jones' dad.
Anderson Silva, let me preface this. There's nothing that would give me greater pleasure in the field of MMA than to see either Anderson Silva or George St. Pierre knocked out completely cold. Anderson Silva more so because of his
awesomeness.
His awesomeness, but how he treats his opponents from time to time.
Do you like John Jones?
I
like watching John Jones fight.
I don't like John Jones. But there's nothing that would give me greater pleasure than seeing Silva out. With that said, I think he could easily walk into the cage against John Jones and hit him with something John Jones has never even thought of before and put John Jones' lights out whenever he wanted to. Anderson Silva is that good.
Like the triangle vagina, for instance?
He could break his penis through the cup it would be legal for some reason, and he would win.
Of course, Joe Rogan would talk about the Thai Cup for 25 minutes. The other reason is this cruiserweight division is really long overdue. We've had a lot of fighters take unnecessary losses because of the substantial and ludicrous weight difference. Guys like Randy Couture, Fedor, even Alex, his dumb drunk brother. Crow Cop is truly a cruiserweight. I really think it's overdue.
It is.
What's your way to fix mixed martial arts?
Well, there's a ton of ways that I can think of, but given our time frame, I got into MMA when MMA was still where an opponent respected his opponent. And it seems like every single fight needs to be hyped where Fighter A hates Fighter B because somebody talked to each other's girlfriend and now they're angry. There's got to be some reason every single time. It can't just be, I don't know, Fighter A is fighting Fighter B because that's who they've matched up against each other because it's a great match, and then they're going to go in there and fight the way that they're supposed to, and afterwards slap high five or whatever. I know they still do that, but when you hype it up that they hate each other so bad and then they go ahead and give across to each other after the fight, it's just not the same. What I want to see is fighters respecting each other. I want them to get back to the roots of the two guys coming up to each other, like Pat Barry Crow type fight. They had respect for each other. Let the bad blood create itself. Let it happen, such as like with Rampage and Rashad. Let the bad blood create itself. Quit overhyping fights.
I agree that there should be less forced media hype because some fighters are good at it and some fighters are bad. You know, like when BJ Penn says, you know, they're basically making me say bad stuff about my opponent, but I don't really feel that way. It really underscores an artificiality in the UFC. One thing that I don't like, which touches on your point, is when you've got an NFL game and two football teams are playing, and one team is bad, like, say, the Oakland Raiders, and the other team is good. The announcers don't say, this is going to be a titanic matchup in the greatest ever in the Ultimate Football Championship. they don't lie. They don't make it like, okay, you know, the Raiders aren't very good. They can do that in fights. There should be at least some integrity in how the fighters, you know, like Mike Goldberg, this fighter is the most impressive with his leg kicks off of his lead leg in the third round in UFC history. Really?
Can we just sidebar for a second? Why does Mike Goldberg always talk like a robot? Even when he's live, when he's doing the promos, why does he talk like that? That always irks me.
What irks me in this little sidebar is how he talks passively. For instance, the leg kicks are dangerous of Dustin Poirier.
I can't get over that. And if you're ever watching before the fight when Goldberg and Rogan are just talking to each other, Goldberg is way inside his personal bubble, just staring, trying to lock eyes with Rogan as if to tell him he loves him. He loves him in a weird way that Dana wouldn't approve of. Watch for that the next time you see a UFC event. The way Goldberg looks, like peers into his heart. That bothers me. But anyway.
So in addition to fixing mixed martial arts, we're actually going to help as the UFC scouts. We're going to go out and dig through the smaller regional promotions through the second tier and say, hey, these are the fighters that are UFC worthy. My guy is a guy that actually fought in the UFC, and he may be the only fighter that was cut off of a win from an extremely embarrassing opponent and a late bell on a rear naked choke. He has since gone on to Bellator and has gone undefeated. His overall record is an impressive 31-4. He's a middleweight. I am, of course, talking about the babyface Brazilian killer, Michael Feixão. I can't say Portuguese words. Had an outstanding warrant in Brazil. All that's been cleared up. So he's actually eligible to come back. Bring him back, Dana. Bring him back.
I liked his one fight. I did enjoy that. I was like, whoa, who is this guy?
He flurries fairly nicely.
He does. I'm not as high on him. I don't think he'll own a belt in the UFC, but I would like to see him come back. He was interesting to watch.
This is a fallacy of mixed martial arts fans. Whenever you say this guy should come over, they say, well, he's never going to be champion. Well, right, but neither are 99% of the guys on the roster. But this guy is worthy. He'll make exciting fights. Bring him over.
To my point, I want to see the Pitbull brothers come over from Bellator. I don't think either of them will ever hold a belt, but I love watching the two of them fight. I also love that they share the same nickname. I really get up for a Patricky Pitbull fight. He's 10-4 at lightweight. His brother's 17-1 at featherweight. Patricki's on a downslope right now with a 2-fight losing streak, while his brother's on a 3-fight win streak.
So you're saying package deal?
Package deal. I mean, okay, think of brothers in MMA. You've got the Miller brothers. The Miller brothers are, you like them. Obviously, Dan's the not as good one, but you like them. And then think of the Diaz brothers, the bad brothers. You like them or hate them, the Diaz brothers can scrap, and the Pitbull brothers can. The Pitbull brothers are not the kinds of guys that are there to be best friends with you, just like the Diaz brothers. I'm not putting either Patricki or Patricio on the level of Nate or Nick, but they're in 2 different weight classes, like Nate and Nick, and I think they can do damage in the UFC. Also, like Nate and Nick, they struggle with wrestlers. Patricio's only loss, his single loss, is to boring Joe Warren. So I think that they can come right over. 21 finishes combined between the 2 brothers. They come to fight. I'd love to see them in the UFC. They're almost the only reason I watch Bellator from time to time.
I have one comment to make.
And that is?
Patricki Pitbull sounds like a microbrewery.
Patricki Pitbull. Patricki is such a cool name, especially when it's backed up with Pitbull.
Yeah, it sounds like something you'd like. I'd like the Patricki Pitbull, please. Thanks.
Every time I see one, I get up and just go, Patricki Pitbull!
He needs to be on Discuffling.
Bring him on, Scuffle.
Next, we're going to talk about the question of the week. And this is something that we pulled off of MMAshare.com. Mr. Teeth, don't ask me about the usernames, I just read them. He wrote this. He says, is it me or does it seem like the level of interest in UFC fights have gone down? They're trying to expand their cable footprint, etc., etc. The amount of cards, too many, amount of injuries that are canceling cards. The rivalries are manufactured and not natural. Where did I hear that one just 10 minutes ago? The frequency of fights in the heavyweight division, same old guys dominating. What do you think, Mitchell? Is the UFC losing some of its interest? Is it losing some of its momentum?
In the last year or so, I'll be honest, I've lost interest. But there are also a lot of cards at one time, and then there's enormous gaps in between cards. And I think that's where fans start to go, my interest is waning. But I know that it's the week of a card coming up, and then that weekend, I read everything I can, and I'm always sitting in a chair somewhere watching those fights. I will say, though, that I definitely miss Strikeforce, especially in those gaps. Strikeforce would put on cards that were going to be fireworks. Someone was getting knocked out. Someone was overmatched, and they were going to have fun fights. So I do miss the Strikeforce fights. I think they actually made the UFC, they rivaled the UFC and kind of pushed them. But no, I've lost interest a little bit, but no, I'm not bored with the UFC.
The UFC has really paid for its own success. There's that, and there's another thing as well. But before the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 finale, which really put the UFC on the map, that was in 2005. Before that, the UFC held a grand total of 39 fights in 2004 on 5 cards. Fast forward to 2005, Griffin versus Bonner. That was in early April. Until that card, for the previous 3 months, the UFC had 1 card. They had another card planned directly after in April, and another card planned in June. So for the first 7 months of 2005, the UFC had planned and executed 4 cards total. And one of those was the Ultimate Fighter Live finale. After that, in August, 2 cards. In October, 2 cards. In November, 1 card. The following year, in 2006, they jumped up to 18 cards. Or let's look at it in terms of fights. In 2004, 39 fights. The year after The Ultimate Fighter, 158 fights. Since The Ultimate Fighter, the UFC, in terms of number of fights, because their cards are bigger than what they were back then, it has grown 877%. In 2012, including UFC 155, there will have been 342 fights on 31 cards. Compared that back to 2004, 39 fights on 5 cards. That's 7 years. That's barely enough time to grab in the next generation of mixed martial artists. So yes, the talent is stretched thin. And if you want to look at it just from 2011 to 2012, when they signed the Fox deal, 2011, 300 fights, 27 cards. And that's a lot because they still had a public footprint on Spike. They go to Fox, 342 fights and 31 cards. Again, an increase of over 10%. 14% to be precise. So yes, the UFC is suffering from its success. It's gotten extremely popular very quickly, and they just don't have the talent to pull it in. Here's the problem number 2. The UFC does have great fighters. They've been very selective on who they've marketed. GSP, star. Anderson Silva, recently a star. Even as soon as like a year and a half ago, he was still kind of that Brazilian guy. Brazil, they broke that market with the huge event, the first one with Nogueira when he knocked out Brendan Schaub. That's what really brought all the marketing dollars to Silva. But I don't think they're as oiled of a machine as the other promotions, or as the other sports. Like the NBA is a great star maker. The UFC has to get better at this aspect, and that will bring back some of the interest. The fights are still as good as ever. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for the professional idiot, you sure know how to do some math.
Excel. It was all Excel spreadsheet.
Don't sell your secrets.
Oh, sorry.
No, that is. I mean, when you lay it out like that, that is incredible that they've grown that much in such a short amount of time. But I mean, what I got out of what you're saying is basically, it's ridiculous for us to ask, has the UFC gotten boring? Because just 7 years ago, we were, what was it, 5 cards for a whole year?
Yep, 5 cards. So 39 fights total for the entire year.
5 cards. Nowadays, 5 cards would be 55, 60 fights. So they've spoiled us, and now we're going to complain about them getting boring.
The only thing you have to say to MMA fans is just be patient. Guys like Rory McDonald are just on the horizon. There are probably a whole crop of fighters that aren't even in the UFC, that aren't even fighting professionally yet, just 3 to 4 years out, and all of them will be killers like a Dustin Poirier, a Rory McDonald, a John Hathaway. They're just on the horizon, so just be patient. The money's there. Now the talent will come.
And John Jones is already hit. So, like you said, what's coming next? And in the Tough House, apparently, this upcoming season with John Jones, Dana White is talking about some guy that the rest of the fight, literally all the other fighters in the house, are scared of. So I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's done, but I'm excited. January 22nd, that will be a season of Tough. I watch every episode.
So that's our answer to the MMA Share question of the week. I say the UFC is just as compelling as always. The UFC has to get better with their promotion of individual fighters, and in no time at all, we'll have the next crop of stellar athletes, and all of these growing pains will be long forgotten.
So we've gone ahead and scouted and then also fixed the problems for the UFC, all without being under the scuffle belt and getting paid.
That's exactly right. We're heroes. We deserve medals.
I tell you.
Unappreciated in our own time. I did have something fun for us to do. I'm going to write a column next week about the fattest guys in mixed martial arts. And this is, of course, in honor of the winner from last weekend's card, main headline card on the Tough 16 finale, Big Country Roy Nelson. Just off the top of your head, why don't you give me some of the fat... And we're talking real tubby bastards. Like Fedor, he was kind of a cute chubby. You know, you want to pinch him on his little summy.
He was chubby. He wasn't tubby.
Very well done. Well played, sir. I'm talking about really fat bastards like Titties from The Ultimate Fighter with Rampage and Rashad, a.k.a. Daryl Schoonover.
I just remember him as Titties. I have no idea that that's his real name. If I had to go with the tubbiest guys, Butterbean and Zulazino, they stand out to me. Butterbean was only in it for a short time, but my favorite tubby man was Tank.
It has to be Tank.
Has to.
I think that guy has completely gone off the rails. I saw an interview of him lately with hair, and his hair, he was, what do they call it, a swoop?
Swoop?
The Justin Bieber haircut?
He's
got that? One of those. He does.
Oh my goodness.
He looks like what you'd expect if you walked into a country western bar in the 1970s in Arkansas. Like, he just looks horrible. Come back to his Tank. Bring the Tank-O-Lock with you.
When he, I guess not even a year ago, he was participating in backyard brawls for money. So he's really fallen off. I wish he would, though, not do the swoop. I actually just Googled it. I see what you're talking about.
It's horrible.
He looks like a terrifyingly... that's terrible. He looks like a biker. Not just a biker, but not even cool.
Pedo biker.
Pedo biker. Oh.
I'd have to say the fattest man to ever compete in martial arts was Akebono, the former sumo grand champion, Hawaiian. He's like nearly 7 feet tall, 500 pounds. He'd have to be the fattest.
Well, who would be your... is Tank your favorite fat boy?
Yeah, he'd have to be. There's not a lot of charisma in that group. In terms of who's the best, it's got to be Roy Nelson.
Yeah, definitely.
We're approaching the end of our show, but I thought it'd be fun if we had an ongoing little fun question. I stole this from the Basketball Jones podcast. Check those guys out. But they have this question about who's better, Kobe or LeBron, and they come up with a question, and then we're supposed to answer it creatively and explain who we think is the best. Our question is going to be, who's the greatest of all time, GSP, Anderson Silva, or Fedor? And to do this, we're going to look at a variety of criteria. And my question to you is, Mitchell, who's the greatest of all time at ice skating? GSP, Fedor, or Anderson?
I think that's kind of an easy one. Anderson Silva lives in Brazil, not much ice there. Fedor, Russia, lots of ice. It's cold, but only thing on his mind is Jesus and fighting. So I'm going to go GSP from Canada. I think he can ice skate. I think he had to grow up ice skating.
I think we can agree that this is not Anderson Silva's forte, although I bet he's naturally good at it. With those long legs. I'm sure he is. But I'm gonna go with Fedor, because GSP is in a country that has officially shut down their hockey league. There is no hockey in Canada right now. And so I'm going to say he's forgotten how to skate. And if we take ice skating and include the fact that Fedor is probably the best at doing a running belly slide on the ice, I think he clearly is the gold medalist in that competition. Fedor is the greatest of all time.
I would like to know, of the three of those gentlemen, who would win a fight while ice skating.
Anderson.
Anderson Silva would front kick both of them and split their faces wide open. That would be my...
well, that's true. I'd like to see GSP try takedown on ice skates.
I'd like to see that as well. Hopefully he wouldn't break the ice with Fedor's heavy bottom.
Yeah, and the other thing is Fedor, with the way he throws his punches, I'm sure it'd be really hard for him to keep his balance. So in terms of ice skate fighting, Anderson.
Fighter.
Yeah, exactly. Next week we'll talk about breakdance fighting.
Ooh.
That's it for the show. Next week we'll have another fun show. We're going to be previewing the UFC 155 card. We won't do a show. We'll just do one show next week because of Christmas or Kwanzaa. We don't judge. Be sure to check us out on whatculture.com. We have a lot of fun articles coming up. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Lucky Rob. Follow us on iTunes. We always appreciate your support. Mitchell, would you like to say goodbye to the people?
I would. I'd like to encourage you guys to leave comments and let us know what it is maybe you'd like us to discuss or not discuss, or whatever it is you think you need to talk about.
Or if you think that our voices are too nasally, we'd like to know.
Yeah, if we're too nasally, please.
Every podcast, let us know.
Please tell me I'm too nasally.
Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll talk to you before the UFC 155 card.
Merry Christmas.